On the 2nd of June 1946, 24,946,878 Italians walked into polling stations. It is the first time in the nation's history that women vote in a national ballot. 2 days later, the provisional results were announced. 12,718,641 of them, 54.27%. have voted to abolish the monarchy. 10,718,502 have voted to keep it. The margin is roughly 2 million votes. The geography is a wound that will never fully close. The industrial north votes Republican by 66%. The agrarian south clings to the crown at 64%. And the region of Campania alone delivers 77% for the monarchy. On June the 18th, the Court of Cassation certified the result. There are 21,000 disputed ballots. They change nothing. What follows the vote is not merely the end of a dynasty. It is the legal annihilation of one. The constitution that emerges from the Constituent Assembly contains a 13th transitional and final provision, written with the precision of a surgical instrument. Paragraph 1 strips all members and descendants of the House of Savoy of the right to vote and to hold public office. Paragraph 2 bans the former kings, their spouses, and their male descendants from entering or residing on Italian soil. Paragraph 3 confiscates every asset the family owns on national territory and declares any property transfer made after June 2nd, 1946, null and void. Article 139 of the new Constitution ensures that the republican form of government cannot be the subject of constitutional amendment. The republic is permanent. The dynasty is not merely deposed, it is constitutionally erased from the land, from its property, from its political existence, and from the future. The man who loses everything is Umberto II. He dies 37 years later in a hospital in Geneva, and the last word he speaks is the name of the country that expelled him. His wife, Marie-Josée, lives apart from him for 3 decades in Swiss exile, becomes a published historian, and dies at 94 without ever living in Italy again. Their eldest son, Vittorio Emmanuel, the heir to a non-existent throne, shoots a 19-year-old German boy on a Mediterranean island and is later recorded on a prison wiretap boasting about how he fooled the judges. Their eldest daughter, Maria Pia, marries a Yugoslav prince, divorces, remarries at 69, and outlives nearly everyone. Their second daughter, Maria Gabriella, is courted by the Shah of Iran, vetoed by the Pope, and ultimately sides with a rival branch of her own family against her brother. Their youngest, Maria Beatrice, survives 2 suicide attempts, loses a son who falls from a Boston, terrace at 23, and disappears into a silence from which she has never fully emerged. And their grandson, Emmanuel Filiberto, who has never lived in Italy, who was born in exile and raised in exile, returns to the country that constitutionally banned his bloodline and wins a dancing competition on national television. The House of Savoy ruled as kings of Italy for 85 years, from the proclamation of the kingdom on the 17th of March 1861 to the referendum of 1946. 4 monarchs sat on the throne. Victor Emmanuel II unified the peninsula through 3 wars of independence and a diplomatic alliance with Napoleon III that reshaped the map of Europe. Umberto I expanded Italy's colonial ambitions and was assassinated by an anarchist named Gaetano Bresci in Monza on the 29th of July 1900. Shot 3 times at close range while distributing prizes at a gymnastics competition. Victor Emmanuel III inherited the crown at the age of 30 and reigned for 46 years. On the 28th of October 1922, when his entire cabinet unanimously recommended declaring martial law to stop Mussolini's black shirts marching on Rome, he refused to sign the decree. The army was loyal. The carabinieri were deployed. The black shirts were poorly armed and disorganized. The king's refusal to act handed power to fascism. He would go on to accept the titles Emperor of Ethiopia in 1936 and King of Albania in 1939. He signed the 1938 racial laws, the leggi razziali, that stripped Italian Jews of civil rights, banned them from universities and public office, prohibited mixed marriages, confiscated their property, and laid the groundwork for deportation to the camps. When the war turned against Italy, he dismissed Mussolini on the 25th of July 1943 and then fled Rome on the night of September the 8th after announcing the armistice with the Allies without issuing orders to his own armed forces. 600,000 Italian soldiers were captured by the Germans in the days that followed. The comparison with King George VI staying in bombed London was made across every Allied newspaper. By the time Victor Emmanuel abdicated in favour of his son in May 1946, the dynasty's association with fascism, military defeat and national humiliation was the single largest argument in the Republican campaign's arsenal. Umberto II inherited a throne that had already been hollowed out from within. He reigned for 34 days. Before they were kings of Italy, the Savoys governed the county and Duchy of Savoy from approximately 1003, nearly a millennium of continuous sovereignty, making them the oldest ruling dynasty in Europe at the time of their fall. The physical empire they accumulated across those centuries was staggering. The Quirinal Palace in Rome, 110,500 square metres, the sixth largest palace in the world, the Royal Palace of Turin, the Castle of Racconigi in Piedmont, the Palazzo Pitti in Florence, Villa Ada in Rome, 22 royal residences across Piedmont that would later be inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1997. The crown jewels alone, housed in a single casket, contained approximately 6,732 diamonds, totaling roughly 2,000 carats, over 2,000 pearls, sapphires, emeralds and rubies, set into tiaras, necklaces and brooches. Their estimated value, 300 million euros, all of it in the stroke of a constitutional provision transferred to the state. Umberto Nicola Tommaso Giovanni Maria di Savoia was born on the 15th of September 1904 at the Castle of Racconigi. He was the only son among Victor Emmanuel III's 5 children. On the 9th of May 1946, his father abdicated in a final gambit to save the monarchy before the referendum, the theory being that a younger, untainted king might sway the vote. Umberto's reign lasted 34 days. They called him the May King, Re di Maggio. After the referendum result was announced, monarchist generals in Naples offered to rally military support. Umberto refused. La mia casa ha fatto l'Italia, non la dividerò. My house united Italy. I will not divide it. On the 13th of June 1946, at approximately 3 in the afternoon, he left the Quirinal Palace for the final time. Servants had assembled in the courtyard. Many were weeping. A carabiniere seized his hand. "Your Majesty, we will never forget you." Umberto flew from Ciampino Airport to Lisbon. He settled in Cascais, on the Portuguese Riviera, under the protection of Antonio de Oliveira Salazar's authoritarian government, a dictatorship sheltering a deposed king. His exile residence was initially the Villa d'Este, provided by the Pinto Basto family. From 1961 until his death, he lived at Villa Italia, a property built on adjacent land named by Umberto himself, financed by loyal monarchists. The villa overlooked the Atlantic. Umberto could see the sea from his study. He could not see Italy. He never formally abdicated. He received visitors, monarchist delegations, European royals passing through Lisbon, the occasional journalist, and maintained a routine of almost monastic regularity. He rose early. He read Italian newspapers delivered a day late. He collected historical documents and rare manuscripts relating to the House of Savoy, amassing one of the finest private collections of Italian royal correspondence in Europe. He issued annual New Year's messages to a dwindling circle of Italian royalists who addressed him as Your Majesty, and whose letters arrived at a villa that was not a palace and never would be. He wore dark suits. He walked alone along the coastal promenade in Cascais. He did not give interviews about his feelings. The few photographs from this period show a tall man growing thinner, standing very straight, looking at something outside the frame. His marriage to Marie José collapsed under the weight of exile, incompatibility, and decades of accumulated silence. She departed for Geneva, citing an eye illness that was real and a marital incompatibility that was older than the Republic. They never divorced. Catholicism and dynastic calculus made that impossible. But they lived separately for over 3 decades, occasionally appearing together at family events, baptisms, weddings, funerals. They reunited only during his final illness, when Marie José travelled to Geneva to be present. Umberto died on the 18th of March 1983 at the Cantonal Hospital in Geneva. He was 78 years old. He had suffered from cancer for approximately 3 years. The immediate cause was kidney failure. In the weeks before his death, President Sandro Pertini had lobbied Parliament to allow Umberto to come home to die. Even the Italian communists agreed that democracy was firmly enough rooted to permit a dying man his last wish. The parliamentary process did not conclude in time. His family was present. According to Falcone Lucifero, the spokesman for the House of Savoy, his last word was Italia. He was buried on the 24th of March at Hautecombe Abbey on the shores of Lake Bourget in Savoy, France, the traditional resting place of the Counts and Dukes of Savoy since the 12th century. His will contained one historic bequest. The Shroud of Turin, owned by the House of Savoy since 1453, was left to the Holy See. The Quirinal Palace became the official residence of the President of the Italian Republic on the 1st of January 1948. Built in 1583 as a papal summer residence, expanded over 3 centuries, it had served as the seat of the kings of Italy since 1870. Its 1,200 rooms, its gardens covering more than 4 hectares, its frescoed ceilings and marble staircases, all of it passed to the Republic. The Royal Palace of Turin became the centerpiece of the royal museums, housing the Galleria Sabauda, masterpieces by Raphael, Rembrandt and Van Dyck, the Royal Armoury with one of Europe's finest collections of medieval and Renaissance weapons, and the Royal Library containing Leonardo da Vinci autographs, including the celebrated self-portrait in red chalk. The castle of Racconigi, where Umberto had been born, remained nominally in family hands until the Italian state purchased it in 1980. By then the family had no legal standing to maintain it and no resources to do so from exile. Villa Ada in Rome, where Mussolini had been arrested by the Carabinieri on the 25th of July 1943, was converted into the city's second largest public park, 180 hectares of umbrella pines and holm oaks. Its main villa ceded to the Egyptian embassy. The Palazzo Pitti in Florence had been donated to the state by Victor Emmanuel III in 1919, but the family considered that an act of generosity, not confiscation. The distinction mattered to them. It changed nothing about the outcome. The crown jewels were entrusted to the Bank of Italy on the 5th of June 1946 at 5 in the afternoon, 3 days after the referendum and before the result was even certified. Umberto instructed Falcone Lucifero, Minister of the Royal Household, to deliver them personally to the bank's governor, Luigi Einaudi, who would himself become Italy's first president 2 years later. Umberto attached a handwritten note, entrusted to the custody of the Central Treasury of the Bank of Italy, to be kept available to whomever has the right. The collection filled a single casket with 3 trays, approximately 6,732 diamonds totaling roughly 2,000 carats, over 2,000 natural pearls, sapphires, emeralds and rubies, mounted in tiaras, diadems, necklaces, brooches and bracelets, including the iconic Queen Margherita's Savoy knot tiara and the crown diamond necklace. The casket has been opened precisely once since that day, in 1976, when jeweller Giovanni Bulgari confirmed that nothing was missing. It remains sealed behind 11 seals in a vault at the Bank of Italy's Central Depository. No member of the House of Savoy has seen it since 1946. The estimated value, €300 million. Of all the royal exiles in history, the Habsburgs, the Romanovs, the Ottomans, which dynasty do you think lost the most completely after losing power? I'd like to know. Comments below. Marie, José, Charlotte, Sophie, Amélie, Henriette, Gabrielle of Belgium was born on the 4th of August, 1906 in Ostend. The youngest child and only daughter of King Albert I of the Belgians and Duchess Elizabeth in Bavaria. She married Umberto in the Pauline Chapel of the Quirinal Palace on the 8th of January 1930. The marriage was arranged for dynastic reasons and it was unhappy from the beginning. She later said, "On n'a jamais été heureux." "We were never happy." She reportedly told confidants that she should have run away the night of the wedding. Before the fall, she had distinguished herself as the only member of the House of Savoy to actively resist fascism from within the palace walls. She smuggled money and supplies to partisans. She met secretly with opposition politicians, Ivanoe Bonomi, Alcide de Gasperi, Benedetto Croce. She called Mussolini provolone, big cheese, and she described the Savoy family with a precision that no historian has improved upon. "I don't have much to do with the House of Savoy. It's not a family, it's a Frigidaire." After leaving Italy on the 5th of June 1946, Marie-José settled near Geneva at Merlinge, where she lived for most of the next 5 decades. In the early 1990s, she sold her Swiss home and moved to Cuernavaca, Mexico, to live with her youngest daughter, returning to Switzerland in 1996. An accomplished pianist who had studied under the violinist Eugène Ysaye, she dedicated herself to historical scholarship in exile. She published a best-selling memoir about her parents' heroism during the First World War. She established the Queen Marie José International Musical Composition Prize, a biennial competition that endures to this day. She received the French Légion d'honneur for her scholarly contributions. Her first return to Italy came in March 1988, 42 years after her departure. She attended a historical conference in Aosta and toured the Royal Palace of Turin. Marie-José died on the 27th of January 2001 at a clinic in Thonex near Geneva. She was 94. The cause was lung cancer. She was buried beside Umberto at Hautecombe Abbey. Approximately 2,000 mourners attended, among them King Albert II of Belgium, King Juan Carlos of Spain, and Empress Farah Pahlavi of Iran. She had been queen for 34 days and exiled for 55 years. Maria Pia di Savoia was born on the 24th of September 1934 in Naples. She was 12 years old when exile began. She married Prince Alexander of Yugoslavia on the 12th of February 1955 in Cascais, producing 4 children before divorcing in 1967. In 2003, at the age of 69, she married Prince Michel of Bourbon-Parma, who was 77. She divided her time between Neuilly-sur-Seine, near Paris, and Palm Beach, Florida, published a memoir in 2010, and remained active in Savoy charitable causes. She is 91 years old. She attended her brother Vittorio Emanuele's funeral on February 2024. She is the last surviving child of Italy's last king. Vittorio Emanuele di Savoia was born on the 12th of February 1937 in Naples. He was 9 years old when exile began. He grew up between Switzerland and Portugal, trained as a banker and worked as an aircraft salesman, and, by wide acknowledgement, an arms dealer. On the 15th of December 1969, he unilaterally declared himself King of Italy, a claim his father never endorsed. On the 7th of October 1971, he married Marina Ricolfi Doria, a Swiss waterski champion and daughter of a biscuit company founder, in a ceremony in Tehran during the Shah's 2500-year celebration of the Persian Empire. King Umberto II had not granted permission. This fact fractured the dynasty permanently. On the night of August the 17th to the 18th, 1978, on the island of Cavallo off southern Corsica, Vittorio Emanuele discovered that a group of young tourists, Italians and Germans anchored nearby, had used his rubber dinghy without permission. He armed himself with an M1 carbine rifle. He sailed to their cluster of moored boats in darkness. 2 shots were fired across the water. A bullet tore through the fiberglass hull of a cabin cruiser and struck a 19-year-old German university student named Dirk Hammer, who was sleeping below deck. The round entered his leg and abdomen, severing a femoral artery. Vittorio Emanuele initially promised to send his helicopter for evacuation. The helicopter never arrived. Dirk was transported by other means to a hospital in Marseille. He arrived clinically dead, but was revived. Over the following months, he endured 14 operations. His leg was amputated. On the 7th of December 1978, 112 days after being shot, Dirk Hammer died in his father's arms in a hospital in Heidelberg. He was 19 years old. 48 hours before the boy's death, Vittorio Emanuele had fled to Mexico on a Belgian diplomatic passport obtained through his cousin, King Baudouin. Evidence vanished. Witnesses changed their accounts. The case languished for 12 years. At the November 1991 Paris Assize Court trial, Vittorio Emanuele was acquitted of manslaughter but convicted of unauthorized firearm possession and received a 6-month suspended sentence. The story did not end there. In June 2006, incarcerated on separate corruption charges in an Italian prison, Vittorio Emanuele was secretly recorded telling a cellmate, "I was in the wrong, but I must say I fooled them," referring to the French judges who had acquitted him. The journalist who broke the story was Beatrice Borromeo, who later married Pierre Casiraghi of Monaco. Dirk Hammer's sister Birgit responded publicly. What for her? Family was a confession was, for him, a boast. He laughed about the fact that he killed a boy. In August 2017, Italy's Supreme Court of Cassation ruled that Vittorio Emanuele could not escape civil and ethical responsibility for Dirk's death, but statutes of limitation across every relevant European jurisdiction precluded reopening the criminal case. Borromeo directed a 2023 Netflix documentary, The King Who Never Was, which brought the Cavallo Island shooting to a global audience decades after the French courts had closed the file. His membership in the clandestine Masonic Lodge Propaganda Due, P2, member number 1621, linked him to Italy's deepest post-war corruption networks. The lodge's membership list, discovered in March 1981 during a raid on the villa of Grandmaster Licio Gelli, contained 44 members of parliament, 3 cabinet ministers, all the heads of Italy's intelligence services, and 119 senior military officers. Vittorio Emanuele was among them. His June 2006 arrest in Verona, on charges of criminal conspiracy, corruption, racketeering and exploitation of prostitution, allegedly recruiting Eastern European women for clients of the Casino di Campione, produced wiretapped conversations so damaging that even monarchist organizations distanced themselves. Magistrate Henry John Woodcock described him as the undisputed leader of an influence trafficking network. He was acquitted of all charges in 2007 and 2010. The reputational damage was permanent. Vittorio Emanuele di Savoia died on the 3rd of February 2024 in Geneva. He was 86 years old. His ashes were interred at the Basilica of Superga in Turin, the church built in 1731 by Victor Amadeus II to commemorate a military victory, the traditional burial place of Savoy royals on Italian soil. The heir to Europe's oldest dynasty was cremated and placed in a wall. Maria Gabriella di Savoia was born on the 24th of February 1940 in Naples. She was 6 years old when exile began. In the late 1950s, the Shah of Iran expressed interest in marrying her. Pope John XXIII reportedly vetoed the union of a Catholic princess and a Muslim sovereign. She married Robert Zellinger di Balcani, a Romanian-Swiss businessman, on the 12th of February 1969. They had one daughter before separating in 1976 and divorcing in 1990. Living quietly in Geneva, she authored several books on Savoy history and jewellery. After Umberto's death, she established the Fondazione Umberto II in Maria José di Savoia to preserve the dynasty's documentary heritage. In the succession dispute that divided the family, Maria Gabriella sided with the rival Aosta branch against her own brother. She's 85 years old and continues to oversee the foundation in Lausanne. Maria Beatrice di Savoia was born on the 2nd of February 1943 at the Quirinal Palace in Rome. She was 3 years old when exile began. The family called her Titi. In Cascais, she was admitted to her father's presence once weekly, a melancholic arrangement that sources describe without explanation. On the 18th of March 1967, she shot herself in the chest, perforating a lung but missing her heart. The family told the press it was an accident. A second attempt followed. She jumped from a Geneva window and survived by landing on an awning. She married Argentine diplomat Luis Rafael Reina Corvalan Idillan in a civil ceremony on the 1st of April 1970 in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. They had 3 children. Patricio, born in 1971, died in infancy. Rafael, born in 1970, died in 1994 after falling from a terrace in Boston. He was 23. The couple separated in 1995. Her husband died in 1999. Maria Beatrice di Savoia is 83 years old. She lives privately. She attended her brother's funeral in 2024. She has not given a public interview in decades. The constitutional exile lasted 56 years. The movement to repeal the ban accelerated after Marie-José's death in January 2001. The sight of a 94-year-old former queen being buried in France, denied a resting place in the country she had served and lost, concentrated political minds. On the 23rd of October 2002, Constitutional Law No. 1 repealed the first and second paragraphs of the 13th transitional provision. The ban on male Savoy descendants entering Italy was lifted. The ban on voting rights and eligibility for public office was lifted. The amendment passed both chambers of Parliament with the required 2/3 supermajority, rendering a national referendum unnecessary. Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi's government supported it. Only the communists voted against. The conditions were specific and non-negotiable. Vittorio Emanuele and his son Emanuele Filiberto signed a formal letter in February 2002 swearing loyalty to the Italian constitution and the Republic and renouncing all claims to the defunct throne. The third paragraph, confiscating all Savoy property on Italian soil, was not repealed. It remains in force to this day. The family was permitted to return to a country that still held everything they had once owned. The family's first trip home took place on the 23rd of December, 2002. Vittorio Emanuele and Emanuele Filiberto flew into Rome and drove to the Vatican, where a 20-minute private audience with Pope John Paul II constituted the entirety of their engagement with Italian soil on that first day. The brevity disappointed monarchists who had expected pilgrimages to the Quirinal, to Superga, to the ancestral tombs. A 2003 visit to Naples, the city that had voted overwhelmingly to keep the monarchy in 1946, drew crowds that were mixed at best and hostile at worst. The Republic had endured for 56 years. A generation had grown up, grown old, and died without a king. The Savoys returned to a country that had forgotten what they were and was unsure what they wanted. Emanuele Filiberto di Savoia was born on the 22nd of June 1972 in Geneva. He was the only child of Vittorio Emanuele and Marina Doria, and the grandson that Umberto II never saw grow up in Italy. Educated at the Institut La Rosey, the elite Swiss boarding school whose alumni include the children of kings, arms dealers and billionaires, sometimes all three at once. He worked in finance at Republic National Bank of New York and later at Bank in Geneva before creating the Altin Fund described as the first hedge fund listed on the Zurich Stock Exchange. When the exile ban was lifted, he reinvented himself for the Italian public. In 2009, he won the 5th season of Ballando con le Stelle, Italy's Dancing with the Stars, capturing over 1.5 million viewer votes. The grandson of the last king of Italy, the man constitutionally banned from Italian soil for the first 30 years of his life, was now dancing the samba on Saturday night television while 12 million Italians voted for him by text message. At the 2010 Sanremo Music Festival, he performed a song called Italia Amore Mio, Italy My Love, alongside singer Pupo and tenor Luca Canonici, and finished second. He appeared on more than a dozen Italian television programs over the following decade. His business ventures multiplied. He launched a gourmet pasta food truck in Los Angeles called Prince of Venice, declaring his ambition to become the Starbucks of fresh Italian pasta. He founded a video game company called Royaland. He created a fashion brand called Prince Tees. In November 2022, he acquired the Serie D football club SSD Savoia 1908, a team named inevitably after his own dynasty, based in Torre Annunziata in Campania, the region that had voted 77% to keep his grandfather on the throne. He married French actress Clotilde Courreau, winner of the European Film Award for Best Actress, on the 25th of September 2003 at the Basilica of Santa Maria degli Angeli in Rome, with Prince Albert of Monaco as best man and Valentino designing the dress. They have 2 daughters, Vittoria, born on the 28th of December 2003, and Luisa, born on the 16th of August 2006. The couple separated in 2021. The succession dispute between the main Savoy line and the Aosta branch has never been resolved. Vittorio Emanuele's 1971 marriage without his father's consent, in violation of royal letters, patent issued by Victor Amadeus III in 1780, requiring the sovereign's prior approval for dynastic marriages, led the Unione Monarchica Italiana and the Council of Senators of the Kingdom to recognise Prince Amedeo, Duke of Aosta, as the legitimate head of the house. Even Vittorio Emanuele's own sister, Maria Gabriella, sided with the Aosta claim. No court has issued a definitive ruling. Amedeo died on the 1st of June 2021. His son Prince Aimone, the 6th Duke of Aosta, continues the rival claim with 2 sons of his own. In January 2020, Vittorio Emanuele abolished Salish law within his branch, and in June 2023, Emanuele Filiberto announced his intention to eventually step aside for his eldest daughter, Princess Vittoria, who, at 22, studies in London. The crown jewels remain sealed at the Bank of Italy. In 2022, the four children of Umberto II filed suit in Rome's civil court against the Prime Minister's office, the Ministry of Economy, and the Bank of Italy. In 2025, Judge Mario Tanferna rejected the claim, ruling the jewels were an endowment of the Crown under the Statuto Albertino, state property, not personal possessions. The family has announced plans to appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. A separate 2007 claim for €260 million in damages for the moral injustice of 56 years of exile was rejected outright. The fascist shadow has never lifted. The Savoy name carries the weight of Victor Emmanuel III's decisions, the March on Rome, the racial laws, the flight from the capital, and the family's reckoning with that inheritance has been slow and uneven. Vittorio Emanuele initially minimized the racial laws in public remarks, provoking outrage from Italy's Jewish community and from historians who regarded the laws as a precondition for deportation. On the 27th of January 2005, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, he published an apology in Il Corriere della Sera, acknowledging it was an error for the Italian royal family to have signed them. Emanuele Filiberto went further. On September 2018, he called the laws a disgrace for Italy, first and foremost for the House of Savoy. In January 2021, he wrote to Italy's Jewish community, "I condemn the 1938 racial laws, all of whose weight I still feel on my shoulders to this day." In December 2017, the repatriation of Victor Emmanuel III's remains from Alexandria, Egypt, to the sanctuary of Vecco Forte in Piedmont reignited national debate. Rome's Jewish community condemned the transfer. The president of the Union of Italian Jewish Communities said the king who signed the racial laws deserved no honor on Italian soil. The remains were moved. Anyway, a 2018 poll found 15% of Italians favoured a royalist party. Only 8% backed Emanuele Filiberto as king. He has himself acknowledged the arithmetic. "Today, Italy is a republic," he told an interviewer, "and it is a strong republic. There's no need to restore a monarchy." The current head of the main Savoy line runs a pasta food truck, a football club in Serie D, and a portfolio of media ventures. His daughter is 22 years old, lives in London, and carries the name Vittoria di Savoia, the oldest given name in the dynasty that built the Italian state. The crown jewels sit behind 11 seals in a vault at the Bank of Italy, untouched since 1976. Article 139 ensures the Republic is eternal. Both of these facts are simultaneously true. The dynasty that the 13th transitional provision was written to erase from Italian soil now has a 22-year-old woman positioned to lead it into a generation that has never known the monarchy, will never sit on its throne, and carries its oldest name anyway. No constitutional provision has yet been devised that can erase a bloodline. The Savoys are proof that a family can be expelled from a country, stripped of its assets, banned from its borders for 56 years, humiliated by the crimes of its heirs, and still exist, reduced, transformed, unrecognizable from what it was, but alive. The law took everything it could touch. What it could not touch was a name.